You're listening to the True North Success Podcast. Real stories of personal, professional, and financial wins from Alberta's best. With your hosts, Gary Ma and Amy Kim.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, my special guest is Rick. Rick is a healthcare entrepreneur and orthopedic surgeon with over 30 years of experience in innovation, research, and leadership. As chairman of Tactile Orthopedics and a board member of a Calgary Health Foundation, he mentors health tech founders and advances wearable technology, tech, and the growth of Calgary's healthcare innovation ecosystem. It's a real pleasure to have Rick on the show today. Welcome, Rick.
Well, thank you very much, Amy. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So, Rick, I gave a brief overview of your success. Can you fill in the detail of what you do?
Okay. Well, by training, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, as you say, and I've been practicing in Calgary since 1997. And somewhere along the way in my clinical work, I started to get very interested in different aspects of technology and technology transfer between medicine and the technology ecosystem. And this started off actually when I practiced in Toronto in the early 90s. And I was asked to start to consult for an investment group that was made up of doctors who were interested in a spinal implant. And back then, this was 1992, 93. Back then, venture investment firms and the whole startup ecosystem wasn't really well known. And in retrospect, I realized, I was a technical consultant for a venture firm that was focused on life sciences. Back then, you just said someone was trying to invest money and wanted to figure out, are they going to do the right thing? And that sort of early experience really excited me and brought a lot of interest. And so when I moved to Calgary, I was very much interested in being exposed to that. But that was 1997, and back then, Calgary, the investment was basically, which well would you like to drill? And who are you going to take to drill that? There wasn't a lot of venture funding or angel investment in life sciences technology companies. But eventually, I started a number of companies, all of which I didn't have very much experience with, but I found each of them to be really instructive. And in the early 2010s, me and my co-founders had a particular idea about wearable device technology and how one could use that as a predictable or as a predictor for future health status. And it was that technology that we started a company called Viva Metrica. And we had some success with that and ultimately exited. And the company that actually acquired us was then acquired by TELUS Health a year or two after that. And then it was time to move on to the next thing. So currently I'm chairman of the board of Tactile Orthopedics, and we use high fidelity models to teach surgeons how to operate safely rather than use patients as guinea pigs. We actually use very complex models to teach them how to do different procedures using hip replacement or knee replacements or shoulder replacements and also scopes in the hip and the knee. So, and I do some mentoring also for CEOs and senior leaders in Calgary's health tech and entrepreneur environment. And so it's been a fantastic sort of experience being able to go back and forth between the medical environment and the health tech ecosystem.
Wow, that is awesome. So it's a quite a journey. You started as a surgeon and then a tech consultant, and then later on entrepreneur, and now you're mentoring the other entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
That is a really like exciting journey. Actually, you've been very flexible, able to, uh, um, how can I say that follow your passion, and it's not like defined by like, oh no, I am staying in this position, which a lot of people does. So I'm always interested in like learning about like about the story behind. Like, could you share how you first got started in this field, and like what was there any like defining moments that helped shape the path you're on today? It's because you're very flexible, and then you just never the job never defines you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that so much as I think I'm pretty curious and I like to learn things, and certainly the experience with the investors in Toronto was important. But I think the more important things or experiences were when I tried to do some things completely sort of independently and without any training or experience within the startup community. This was in sort of the late 1990s and early 2000s. That was the beginning of things like Innovate Calgary at the Arthur Ross Technology Center, and I had sort of undertaken a number of projects to develop some medical devices and to develop some different tools that I thought would be helpful in the operating room, and I realized that I just did not have the skills to do that. I mean, I didn't have any friends who knew how to do this, and back then there were very few people who were in the R&D space for medical devices here in Calgary. There were a few. I mean, there's no question there were some quite good people. There still are quite good people who have done that, but to be able to engage with them sort of on a sort of very beginner level was quite difficult. And I remember that I went to Innovate Calgary, and I took a course that they offered. It was 1 day a week over 10 weeks, and it was the sort of startup toolkit program. And they started off with a very broad sort of explanation of what is a business, like how do you sort of move your idea to a business? Who do you engage? What's the IP sort of pathway, and all of those very very basic building blocks, and what that showed me is that there's actually a pathway. It's not that you just go there and things happen, or you just go out there and just do stuff. Hire people, get software developers or mechanical engineers. There's actually a process. There are steps, and this is self-evident for people who have been in business and in technology. It's just like medicine in that you have to go from basics to the next steps to to build a company, and as a physician you don't realize that until you actually go and do that, and so I think that was where my eyes were opened, that to do this successfully, you had to put the same kind of thought, energy, and effort as you do to be good at anything, including medicine. And so that was the big light bulb, and that I thought, wow, this is really, really, this is challenging and very interesting.
I love your story because it reminds me of that someone has that like open-minded growth mindset, and also very curious to learn new technologies and new things, and you are not afraid to jump in and then learn about it. That's something that you don't know, but you want to learn about it with a passion.
Yeah, and you know, I've been practicing now as an orthopedic surgeon for 30, 30. Oh, I can't even remember. I started practicing in 1991, so 35.
Hmm.
That is, my math is not so good.
I hear you. I stopped counting my age after 30, so.
And so one of the things I did notice is that, you know, in the physician part of things, there are people who get on in their practice life and they feel unhappy with where they are, and they feel that that, you know, oh, I have to work another 15 years like this, and I don't know if I can stand it. Although being a physician, being a surgeon is a privileged position, but I think that unfortunately we all sort of find that it gets difficult and repetitive. I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be that person who said, boy, I really hate what I'm doing, and I wish, you know, I'm just waiting for the last 10 years of my career. I wanted to be, and I still want to be, that person who every day I say to myself, well, what is it I really want to, you know, what do I want to see today? What do I want to play with today? What do I want to, you know, sort of learn today? And so I used to think you had to go all the way into that, but now as the ecosystem is maturing, people who are in different walks of life can actually say, well, I can go into this part way as a physician. Maybe I just want to be the chief medical officer, or I want to be the consultant, or I want to be the founder, but not the operator. And so 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, you basically had to say, well, I'm going to start this company. I'm going to be the CEO because no one else is going to go forward with it.
Wow. I love that story. Wow, there's so much wisdom in that, your stories.
Yeah,
So with
that's
your extensive, sorry, you go ahead.
no, I was going to say it's because I made all the mistakes.
But what are the really mistakes are, right? Who says it is mistakes? Because I really truly believe that we learn from the mistakes. If we don't, make any mistake, that means we are not learning.
You're absolutely right, and every time that I've done something wrong, it's helped me in the next thing. And it
Hmm.
sounds a bit cliche, but it really is true. And you know, fortunately, it's not as important as when you're in medicine. You don't want to do a lot of wrong things to learn. You want to be good at things before you, before you operate. But in business, you also want to be good at things. But at least if you're not right, then maybe you lose some money, some time, but it's recoverable most of the time.
Yeah. So my next question was like, so how have your backgrounds in, orthopedics and research and wearable technology shaped the way that you identify opportunities and lead teams through the complex challenges? So we heard about your stories that like you have various experiences from different aspects, not only just entrepreneur aspect, but actually you practice from the field in the medical and then
Hmm.
like a patient. So very different approach probably than most of people just jump in and started to start up. But is there anything else that would you like to add?
Yeah, I think I found that when you're working with people who have a different experience than you have, and you have a problem that you've identified, or you're sort of collaborating on different things, there are things in some industries I know nothing about, but are very common. And they're solving problems that at some point may be very similar to the problem that you have. And so what happens is that you're discussing a problem with someone who comes from an entirely different viewpoint. And they say, well, we do that all the time in oil and gas. We do this particular kind of mechanical, production, or some type of software management, or, for instance, oil well sensors. When we were starting to do wearable, the wearable device work, we were looking at this as using the step count and the heart rate and the sort of body information to try to predict what's going to happen in terms of health into the future. And then you talk to an oil and gas engineer, they've got thousands of sensors now down the well hole, and this is real-time information that's coming up from the well hole and from, let's say 50 or 60 different wells, and they're taking all that data and analyzing it to say, well, what's the decay rate in this particular well? How long is it going to survive? That's sort of what we're looking at. How long will a person survive based on the sensor data that's coming? They're looking to see, well, how much longer will this well keep producing based on the sensor data that's coming from that? And so they're sort of the same if you really think about it. And there's other analogies in industry that do that. And there's always a story about MRI scans where the initial developers of the MRI scan were an engineer and a physician, and they were meeting at a cocktail party, and they were talking about, well, I'm trying to figure out some way to image the body without using X-rays, and the engineer said, well, we look at the internal structure of crystals using what's called magnetic resonance, and then after that kind of a discussion, all of a sudden, they're saying maybe we can use that in the human body, because magnetic resonance is that they use big magnetic fields to change the spinning of the atoms in the body, and then they use the computer to measure all of those changes and then make the picture. And it was not because the engineer said, "Oh, we'll use this for the brain," and it wasn't like the physician said, "Well, we need to use magnetic work on this." It was because they were talking together, and that's where I see the biggest value of having interest in meeting different people.
Love that. Could you tell us more about what are those devices and how they help, your patient and whoever wanting to learn more about their life expectancy, and then maybe perhaps that can even advise that, like, oh, we know your habits. Maybe there's something for improvement.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So wearable devices are evolving, and they started off very simple, measuring walking and how much you walk, and that sort of classic 10,000 steps a day, which is not really a real recommendation. It's just because the company that was making these pedometers thought that 10,000 was a good number of steps. It wasn't really a scientifically based kind of recommendation. Mm-hmm. But since then, the sensors have become more and more developed. They're able now to measure a person's walking gait, measure heart rate at the same time, and they are able to measure blood pressure, but that hasn't been as widely distributed. There's all sorts of other what are called biomarkers that you can measure with a wearable device. Pretty soon, I think that there will be glucose monitoring across the skin, so that if you have some diabetes or prediabetes, that you can understand what's happening with your blood glucose. And what's been really interesting for me is that that I've just started been working with a company called circlebrain.com, and they're actually measuring brain waves and determining how people respond to mental health treatments for things like PTSD or dementia or traumatic head injuries. So now we're getting to a point where we can take a whole lab and bring it into a wearable type of environment and give tools for the clinician to be able to measure things that had taken a lot of effort before. And you can imagine all the different things that you could influence with measurement of brain waves on a frequent and regular basis, and so I think that there's many more things coming, but it's always that thing that we need to figure out, well, what's the best value we can provide for these measurement tools? What's the most scientific basis for the information? And make sure we're not fooling ourselves or patients that we're helping them when we can't prove it. And so for me, the most important part is the scientific evidence behind it, so that if you have a great idea, a great product, and you can prove that you're helping people, then that's getting close to, the sort of, I'll call it the killer app, but I don't mean it that way.
Wow. I have so many good questions. Like I was listening to you. I don't know if you're going to have enough time to ask all of the questions. And on the top of it, we have questions that we usually ask for our
Yes, of course, yeah.
So let's try this.
Okay.
So, what are the expectations? So when we have those wearable devices, how they interact with the is there somebody monitor your because there are lots of data is collecting from those devices. So what are those securities about the privacy around those data?
Yeah.
But on top of it, is it someone monitoring your data and then it would be like come to you and then like actually consult with you? Like we see some symptoms is this, you see some of this, like how that works?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because we work quite a bit with insurance companies, and the goal of the insurance company is to have their life insured patient, or not patients, but customers living as long as possible, so that they don't have to pay out, or they don't pay out prematurely. I mean that's insurance, and so there's a lot of issues with privacy. Who has your data? Who's able to access your data? My personal belief is that we should be the steward, the manager of our own data, and to some extent Apple is doing that, in that it's very difficult to get the data on your iPhone off of the iPhone and going elsewhere, and so the companies hate that. As a developer of wearable analysis, data analysis, I didn't like it because it was hard. But what we had to do was we had to develop an iOS app that actually the individual consciously and individually agreed to share information, and they would understand how much information where was being shared. I think as privacy and personal rights, I think that's probably the best way to go. But I do worry about all the other data that just goes elsewhere. The iPhone and other phones have a huge number of sensors in it. I was surprised at what kind of sensors that it has. It has the motion measurement, of course. It also has atmospheric measurement. It also obviously can listen to you. The actual cameras can look at your face and determine whether you have high blood pressure and what your oxygenation is. Not all of these things are turned on, I think, but there's so many different sensors on it that a lot of the time you may not perceive that you're providing information, but it's just so much information going out. So I think that this is something that government needs to deal with, and I hate saying that, but I think government needs to deal with that in terms of personal privacy and and health information.
Yeah. And then thank you so much for sharing this. But also, so once you collect the data from the wearable devices that your company offers, then how like is anybody monitoring to help your patient? Like how that works?
Yeah, so our company that was doing this is now part of TELUS Health. It was acquired by a Toronto company, which was then acquired by TELUS Health, and so they're providing it for their customers. And so there, as far as I'm aware, there is a monitoring process, or there is an understanding by the people who are managing it currently that there are sort of responses and information that comes from the data that demands some type of response when the data changes. I'm not more. I can't be more certain than that, since it's been probably about 4 years now, since 5 years since the company was acquired by TELUS Health.
I see. So then what is your biggest focus these days?
Yeah, right now my biggest focus is I'm doing advisory work for a few companies, and I'm doing mentoring for what's called the Venture Mentors System of Alberta, Service of Alberta, and that's in Edmonton as well as in Calgary. And we have a team of 3 mentors. There are many of us. I think that there's perhaps about 60 mentors, and we take teams of 3 to support an individual founder and help them with learning to be a better driver of the race car rather than focusing on the race car only. If you can be a good race car driver, then it doesn't matter what kind of car you're driving. You've got the skills to manage that. And so it's been really insightful for me, because many of those things that I didn't know, they're repeated in various different companies, and the more that I can hear about them, learn about them, the more I can help people to avoid those pitfalls.
So could you tell us one more time what's the name of those the groups that people can come in and get some help?
Yeah, it's called Venture Mentor Service of Alberta, VMSA, and there are some acceptance criteria that companies are. The founder's company needs to reach a certain size. We found that if you're a single startup with no revenue, you need a lot more advisory for building the company. Whereas we're really interested in really, once a company seems like it's got some product market fit, then the founder needs to start to think about himself, not him or her, as a single entrepreneur, but more as the CEO of the corporation. And and that's a transition that's hard for some people, and I hope that what we're doing is we're helping people transition to that, where they can grow the company beyond those first sort of times where you start to have, departments in your company. It's been very very rewarding, because I was in fact part of that program. Our company was one of the first in that program, and I found it tremendously helpful, because it really made you think about what you're trying to do, and giving some structure as to how to think about being a leader within your company.
Gotcha. And then that is open to anyone, or is it related to medical
No,
only? Or
it's open to anyone, and in fact, some of the mentees, one person, she has a chocolate company. There's another mentee who actually has a tailoring company, so they make high-end suits for business. There's also another individual who makes a three-dimensional wooden puzzle based on different types of Canadian artwork, and so it's not all health related. There are some who are doing oil and gas. There's some who are doing health tech, and there are others who are doing other companies.
awesome. Okay, so there are more. We have more questions. So let's go a little bit, probably a little bit faster. So, what exciting plans and initiatives do we have coming up over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, well, Tactile Orthopedics is, we've been growing that company for, I mean, realistically for about 10 years, but we accelerated about 5 years ago when we realized that there was going to be some opportunity because of COVID, as opposed to, in spite of COVID, because it uses man-made models. We can transport these throughout the world. You don't need a lab to actually do them, and you could do them. You can practice on these models in your dining room if you wanted to, if your spouse would let you. And the use of cadavers has become much less accepted, both for sort of the actual quality of the learning, but also because of the ethical responsibilities that people have to use cadavers in a very sort of managed fashion. So there was opportunity, and we've been growing that company, and now our this year's goal was to start going away from the U.S. market for obvious reasons, and we've been very lucky to be able to now strike up some distributor deals in the UK. We're just we have sales in Southeast Asia and East Asia, and we still obviously have quite a bit of sales in the U.S. But we are growing our non-U.S. Footprint quite well. I'm very happy with the way it's going. So that's effort and time. And then, as I say, I'm very excited about this advisory position that I'm doing for Circle Brain. I think it's not only is it a great technology, but I think it's going to be very helpful for a lot of problem issues that we haven't had a solution for. We haven't had the ability to say people are getting better or they're not getting better. I think that to know if a person has shown improvement with your treatment is the best way to know that treatment is you're on the right track. If you're not on the right track, then you should try different treatments. But if you can't even measure how you're doing, then it's not effective. So I'm very excited about that because of this technology, and it's not new technology; it's just better applied technology, and so it is exciting.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like your things are going really good for you, and lots of initiatives and planning ahead. Congratulations, Rick. So
Thank you.
let's talk about a little bit of financial success here. So many busy, the medical professionals are earning strong incomes right now, and business entrepreneurs as well. But it often requires a significant investment of the time and effort and energy. So looking ahead, a common goal is like to maintain the same level of income and the lifestyle while maybe perhaps working less, maybe eventually. So especially with the inflation at all-time high. So as a result, many people are exploring ways to generate income outside of their primary work, such as like investing in stock, cryptocurrency or precious metal or real estate. So what are your thoughts about income outside of work?
Well, that's good. I think it comes down to what your risk profile is and what you personally feel comfortable with. I have quite a few colleagues who do the same thing I did before I stopped operating, and they were very conservative and felt that, well, I'm just going to continue to work at what I do and do put in a full day of good work and make my way through this. And I think that it's one of the few professions that you're more or less guaranteed a payment for the work that you do at the end of the week or end of the month. And so, notwithstanding all of the different complaints about not being paid enough, I think physicians are generally paid a reasonable amount. We can all be paid more, but I think we're paid a reasonable amount, and I might get some flack for this, for saying that, but I think that most physicians who are interested in doing entrepreneurial type of activities, a small percentage of them are interested in the money side of things, but I would say probably the majority are interested in doing something different, something they have an idea or a vision or some desire to do something that they've thought about, and I think that that's probably the bigger driver compared to finding a secondary income. There are opportunities to find secondary income that are not nearly as interesting as or as risky in terms of your time, effort, and opportunity cost.
Right. Awesome. So as we wrap up, what advice would you give to aspire health tech entrepreneurs or innovators looking to make a meaningful impact?
Yeah, I think that if you feel like you've got an idea that is different, that you would like to pursue, first of all, pursue it, but pursue it in a way that initially doesn't cost you a lot of time or cost you a lot of money. I think the time you're going to put in, but I talked to quite a few orthopedic surgeons who the first thing they do is they figure, I've got this widget that I can use in surgery, so I'm going to go and patent this, and then after that I'm going to sell it to equipment manufacturer. And if they choose to ask me, my response is, well, first of all, you got to figure out, does someone want to buy this, and do enough people want to buy it that it will be worth your effort? If only 300 people in the world want it, then you're putting $20,000-$40,000 into a patent may not be the best way to spend the money. I think that go to talk to people, get an idea as to, do people really want this? Is this something that you'll sell, 5 million copies of it, or you're going to sell 300 copies? Figure out if there is that product market fit. And if you have some positive response, then keep going. Mm-hmm. Most people will figure it out sooner or later, but the major thing is you got to figure out, does someone want this, and can you make some money at it? Can you sell enough to support it? And it's not even about making millions. It's about, can you come out of this spending less money or spending less money than you're going to get paid for it, or more money than you're going to get paid for it?
Exactly. Would you say that before going full in, do some research, market research, if there's a real demand, rather than you thinking in your head that like maybe it is something they need and then you go full in?
Because in our own little circle, if you've got 3 or 4 of your colleagues doing exactly the same thing, they're going to say, "This is great. I would use this." But in fact, if you go to the broader market, maybe only the people that you trained with, like it, and the people you didn't train with say, "Well, I don't like this. I don't want this." So yeah, you have to do the research and the discovery.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, Rick, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your great insights and inspiring stories with us. So, it was a great pleasure to have you on the show today, Rick. If people would like to get a hold of you, how they can reach out to you?
Yeah, they can reach out on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn at Dr. Rick Hugh at LinkedIn, and I do have an X profile as well as Instagram, but I never check those. LinkedIn is the best way to get a hold of me, and DM me from LinkedIn.
Awesome. So, we truly appreciate your time, Rick, and the perspective you brought to the conversation.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I'm looking forward to hearing some more interesting people on the True North Success podcast.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Okay, thanks.
Want to share your success story? Apply to be a guest at truenorthsuccessshow.com/guest. We'd love to hear from you.